Today I wish to announce my decision in the investigation surrounding the shooting death of Eddie Russell Jr. by Peoria police officers. On September 20, 2017, between approximately 12:35 and 12:45 p.m., the First Mid-Illinois Bank and Trust on Sterling Avenue in Peoria, Illinois was robbed at gunpoint. $4,448 was taken by the armed robber. Immediately, police were called, and a bank surveillance video was reviewed by a Peoria police officer. That Peoria police officer was familiar with the suspect and identified the suspect as Eddie Russell Jr. The officer was aware of two locations Russell might live or frequent. As a result, officers were advised Russell suffered from a mental health illness. The two locations were addressed by Peoria police searching for Eddie Russell Jr. A picture of the suspect from the bank surveillance video was provided to officers. The suspect was not found at the first location, and a second location, which was the suspect mother's residence, was then located. The residence is located on Sheffield, is a duplex with one duplex on the right and another duplex on the left facing each other. There is a double two-stall garage immediately to the north of the duplexes. At that time, police established a perimeter with patrol officers, and those officers were then later replaced by SRT officers as they began to be briefed for the identification of the suspect. 3 trained hostage crisis negotiators were brought to the scene, and additionally, Eddie Russell Jr.'s mother was identified as a possible third-party intermediary to assist in calling Russell out from the residence. The telephone landline on the mother's duplex was repeatedly called by officers without answer. A bullhorn was also used by the hostage crisis negotiators and Russell's mother to call Russell out, but no response was made by Eddie Russell Jr. To increase the volume and the loudness of the communication, a Peoria Police loud hailer, which is a PA system, was brought to the scene. Additionally, the Peoria Police robot was brought to assist officers. The loud hailer PA system was placed at the front door, and over the next approximate 2 hours, the trained hostage negotiators continued to call Russell to exit with his hands up and no weapons. Negotiators indicated police did not want to hurt Russell. Shortly after approximately 3:30 p.m., Russell came out of the duplex, turned to the right. Now, had he turned to the left, he probably would have been able to go to Sheffield Avenue, which would have been a possible escape route because other officers, although present, were hidden and not visible to Russell. Instead, Russell turned to his right with a revolver in his right hand and walked fast toward 2 groups of Peoria police officers. SRT officers were located between the 2 garages and to the left of the garages behind a chain-link fence. As he came out, officers continued to tell Russell, "Stop, drop the gun. Police, drop the gun." Russell did not heed the warnings nor change his course, advancing toward officers. During this time, Russell traveled an estimated 44 feet from the front door toward the 2 groups of officers before officers fired their weapons. After being shot, Russell continued approximately 15 to 20 feet, and officers were continuing to shoot. Russell went to the ground, and on the ground, propped himself up on his right elbow, reaching in the direction of where the gun was located. All officers fired simultaneously and in rapid succession over an approximate 4-second period. At the time Russell was first shot by officers, Russell was an estimated 28 to 30 feet from one of the group of officers. After being shot on the ground, Russell had traveled a total of 62 feet, and on the ground was approximately 11 feet from officers behind a wooden fence. All officers reported seeing the gun in Russell's right hand prior to shooting. while he advanced quickly toward those officers. As Russell had advanced toward them, he continued to raise and lower his handgun at about a 45-degree angle. After Russell was shot, officers recovered a .22 caliber handgun found to be loaded and cocked at that time. The gun was turned over to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab and found to be an operational, functional handgun. Based on the facts presented by the Illinois State Police investigation and the review of various appellate court opinions, the Peoria police officers were legally justified in the use of deadly force when one or more officers discharged their weapons, shooting and killing Eddie Russell Jr. The shooting is found, and I render the opinion that it was legally justified. During the course of this investigation, I have reviewed approximately 68 Illinois State Police and Peoria Police reports, SRT operational manuals, all the shooting officers' training SRT records, approximately 50 appellate court opinions, 13 videos, a Faro video, Illinois Crime Lab report from the firearm analyst, Peoria Police Critical Incident Order, dispatch records, bank surveillance photographs, alcohol and drug reports for the officers involved in the shooting, weather report, toxicology report, coroner's report, search warrant, mental health training for the officers, SRT general order, and the post-shooting incident procedure. Earlier today, before this press conference, I met with Eddie Russell Jr.'s parents and advised them first of my decision. This is a tragic event for our community. I would ask that our community recognize its tragedy and maintain peace in our community. At this time, I'm prepared to address my decision. The decision is in written form and will be made public to those of you available after we conclude the press conference. Questions?
How did the family react?
The family was with their lawyer. Their lawyer was available by phone. They're obviously displeased with my findings and the result. Yes, sir.
What steps are being taken so that this type of incident doesn't happen again?
We have met, and I have advised the chief. You know, the SRT officers train regularly, and they train approximately 18 hours a month. Each of them goes through at least 18 hours of training every month. Additionally, they go to special classes. I've suggested to the chief and I discussed that quite possibly there are SRT training available that addresses mental health. You know, we are at a crossroads where on a regular basis we see a crossroad between mental health issues. Eddie Russell had a mental illness, and we see a crossroad in the criminal justice system and the mental health system. And hopefully we can never repeat what we did on September 20th based on training. However, if someone were to come out with a gun and confront citizens or officers, they are entitled under the law to exercise self-defense. Yes?
Given that there was no dash cam footage or any video of this incident whatsoever, just to be clear, are you saying that you made your decision solely based off of what the Peoria Police Department has told you and the Illinois State Police?
No, the Illinois State Police conducted the investigation. Additionally, I reviewed, and they're present here, approximately 15 appellate court opinions that address the issue of self-defense and situations where self-defense is demonstrated. And so, based on what I earlier mentioned, all those records as well as the interviews, I concluded that. Additionally, if you look at the Faro, there is a distance where Eddie Russell travel down the driveway. And based on that distance, as well as the other evidence, I formed my conclusion and rendered my opinion. Yes, sir.
Have recommendations been made as to special response or just general law enforcement in the city about body cameras going forward? I know it's an issue that's addressed, but
It is a pilot program, and there was an officer on each shift at the time of this shooting. This was a first shift event. The officer that had a body camera was not trained in SRT tactics. It was not a member of the unit, and it would not necessarily be proper technical procedure to place someone who has not been through the training with the other SRT unit. Additionally, the robot camera that I mentioned, that robot has a camera, and you're allowed to receive a viewing of what that camera views. Since the time of the shooting, I am told that that robot has now been equipped with a recording capacity so that it would store what the robot viewed.
One more question. Mr. Brady, how is this decision here going to affect the community relationship between law enforcement and citizens of Peoria?
My message is that I hope the community will remain peaceful. I have not only reviewed all this information, but in reviewing appellate court opinions, I would hope the community would understand this is a tragedy, but the police were, in my opinion, justified in the use of the force used. Yes.
Go ahead, Bridget.
Did the police force not know that he was mentally ill, or did they
Police force
already-
were aware. Police force was made aware of his mental health issue.
So why was the arrest there? Was there mental health
They were,
experts on the scene?
they were not inside the
Why-
perimeter.
Why were no mental health experts called?
Because the SRT unit was handling the situation, and those individuals are not trained, nor did the SRT unit want to endanger them by bringing them into the perimeter.
What's the SRT unit again? What's that stand for?
Special response team?
So when the officers began to shoot in the direction of Eddie Russell Jr., what you're saying is he was in the home, correct, and he came out and went towards the right, towards the garage.
That's correct.
But you're also stating, I also heard you say that there were two police officers on the side adjacent to the garage. Is that correct?
There were officers adjacent to the garage as well as between the garage, located between a wooden fence. Additionally, what would be directionally to the south across Sheffield, there were two officers there as well.
So my question is, how did several shots in the amount of 6+ shots get into the garage if officers were standing right there by the garage?
You know, I don't know that there were 6 shots in the garage. I know that there was one that was recovered.
There's 6 bullet holes, yeah, in the garage. Are you not aware?
I'm aware that there was a bullet recovered in the garage. I'm aware that there were shots fired.
Are you not aware?
That doesn't change my opinion.
People can just go look for themselves. Yeah, that's sad.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir, do we know why the dash cams were not on or were not pointing at the house?
The dash cam,
Are you aware of?
there was, and I addressed that issue. There was a camera on the SRT vehicle, but it did not have a view of the scene because of the tree cover at the scene and the location of the vehicle at the command post,
But it
which was,
recording?
no, it was not, because it was not located on the inside of the perimeter, as well as it wasn't able to view the scene because, according to the report, of the tree cover.
But it could have still been recording conversations even if the view was blocked. It could have still been useful.
Except it wasn't inside the perimeter.
Okay.
Judge Township.
As far as the officers that were involved, were they on administrative leave from September until now, or how long were they on administrative leave?
I don't know whether they are still on administrative leave. That would be an issue for the Peoria Police Department, for the chief. They were placed on leave beginning in September 20th.
I know you had initially quoted the investigation through a lengthy list of things you had to look through, but was
Yes.
there any specific reason why the investigation took this long?
Some of the firearm analysis at the Morton Crime Lab, as well as we were gathering materials, all the way actually up until last week. At times, when you go through, and as I did, specifically as I went through material, there would be questions I would then raise. So I would then meet with the Illinois State Police investigators, and they would then go back and resolve the issues that I raised.
As part of that estate issue, just the processing through the Morton Crime Lab?
Yes. Question?
Just the time.
Yeah, because of the time period. But that wasn't the only reason. Basically, I wanted to make certain, which is why I read the number of appellate court opinions and gathering the facts, trying to make certain that I felt comfortable with my opinion.
Is the vehicle that you referenced, I guess the command post, is that a bulletproof vehicle?
I don't know that. That'd be a question for the Peoria Police Department.
Were there fingerprints on the gun that was found, the 22 revolver that you stated was found?
They did not print that gun. The gun was found right next to Eddie Russell. It was similar in feature to the gun that was displayed at the bank robbery.
But they did not fingerprint that gun?
Not to my knowledge.
So, Mr. Brady, how is the general public going to not fear the police in regards to our citizens with mental capacity? It's a mental health, it's a public safety
Sure.
issue that our people in our society that have mental health issues are being not properly addressed by the police department. What is the police department going to do moving forward when they encounter the next mentally handicapped person in an instance like this?
I met earlier with a number of pastors, and the chief presented my findings, and at that time we discussed with the chief that there could be possibly better mental health treatment for SRT officers if it is available, and that was discussed and well received by the chief of police.
I realize you're not in charge of him, but is there a reason the chief's not here?
Because this is an independent investigation.
How many officers were on administrative leave?
There were 6. That information has been made available. The names of those officers was presented by the Peoria Police Department shortly after the shooting.
Obviously you informed the chief of this too, right?
Yes.
So if I may ask you for your opinion, I understand that based on how the law set forth right now, you have determined that this was the use of justified force, but don't you think that there should be a change in the law? Morally, we should maybe try to do something else other than our first reaction should be shooting at someone?
I'm comfortable with the appellate court opinions. I'm comfortable with the current status of the law as it relates to self-defense.
I have a mental illness. Next time I have a mania episode, am I going to be worried about getting shot?
Ma'am, I don't know that you should be worried about being shot. I don't believe you should.
Well, neither should Eddie Russell Jr. He shouldn't have been.
Questions?
Did the family make any indication that they would appeal your decision?
They did not.
Gary, as far as all the shots coming at the same time, you happen to mention that there were, 18 shots? 18, 19?
17 shell casings were recovered. Those shell casings were recovered from the 3 areas where officers were located, SRT
Is there
officers.
any type of order that you can kind of guess on who shot when or anything like that? I mean, can you put that together from the reports? Or
What I would suggest based on the review, there was an officer located near a wall, and I suspect that he was one of the last to fire.
As far as the number of shots, 18, I think.
17.
Thank you. folks are making it, I think that people are just astonished at the number of shots, especially when it was first reported that it was less than half that, 5, 6, 7, if I remember right. Could you maybe?
Yeah, a couple things on that. Having heard and listened to the approximate 4-second audio from the scene of shots fired, they appear to be in rapid succession. And if you were to listen just to the sound, you probably would come away with believing that fewer shots were fired. Now, that's because they were fired in rapid succession. And that's not uncommon. In reading the appellate court opinions, officers are reacting with adrenaline when they're faced with these situations. And so that very well may account for the shot.
But, and you could also come back and maybe look at it like this too, that if you fire that many shots in that short of a time frame, is that the proper amount of restraint, or?
Well, I think you have to recognize that as he came down, they withheld, there was no evidence at all that he was shot as he came out of the residence. To the contrary, there was evidence there was no blood, plus he was able to travel the distance that he did, which in estimation, and it is only an estimate, would be about 44 feet before officers shot. And during that time period, in the period he continued to advance, there were what probably would be 3 periods. There's the time as he reaches a tree that's located in the driveway, the shots are fired. He continues to advance beyond the tree and shots are fired. He then goes down, and while down, props himself up, posing what could be a continuing danger, and reaches in the direction of where the handgun was located. So this was an ongoing fluid event with the officers firing in rapid succession as he continued his movement.
Can you justify calling that rapid succession when there was 3 different shooting incidents, though, on your own account?
Based on my review and based on the audio that I've reviewed, it's in rapid succession.
And all that took how long, Jerry?
Based on the audio is approximately 4 seconds.
For him to...
For shots to be fired. What you have is you have the officer on the traffic on scene announcing shots fired, and then you hear the shots. That is on a timeline because it's an audio. There's a timeline on that, and it's approximately 4 seconds.
Does it concern you that since there was no actual evidence that says that Eddie Russell was in possession of the firearm that laid on the ground next to his dead body, that there might be an appeal? Because usually isn't normal procedure to...
Well, first of all, there was observation that he was carrying the handgun as he went down the driveway. Also, I've reviewed the bank photo, which I have here, and that bank photo was identified by an officer as Eddie Russell Jr. She was familiar with Eddie Russell Jr. Additionally, the handgun that's displayed has similar characteristics, namely a long barrel, consistent with the handgun that was located and recovered right next to where Eddie Russell went down. That handgun was cocked.
But not printed.
That's correct.
So for clarity,
But did they see the gun when he first came out of the house?
Initially, there was one report that it could be a long metallic object, which could have been a knife. That was referenced, but then quickly changed to gun, drop the gun, stop, police. Those warnings continued, which is consistent with why he came from the front of the residence and had a time period to cover approximately 44 feet.
So for clarity, I know she asked this earlier, so pretty much everything you're finding on what happened that day, you spoke with the Peoria Police Department, that's the
No, I spoke with the Illinois State Police in terms of their investigation. Those investigators, and there were 5, those investigators, all certified, conducted the investigation. They gathered all the information and then presented that information to me. I then reviewed that information along with the other material that I've reviewed, that I've identified, the appellate court opinions, to render my opinion.
At any point, was he running?
He was walking fast based on reports. I would not say that he was running.
Is it standard operating procedure to position a vehicle to obtain dash cam footage?
You know, that's a Peoria Police question. That's not an area that I'm an attorney, I'm the state's attorney. Based on the statute, I'm to review the information based on the investigation.
I can respect that. That's why it would be respectful if we could also hear from your chief of police as well.
Yes.
Can you say definitively that each officer who was placed on administrative leave fired the 2 to 3 shots?
Based on the ballistics, based on the reports, yes, I can.
Then did each officer who fired hit Eddie Russell Jr.?
Probably not. The autopsy, they were not able to do a ballistic analysis that would confirm, given what was recovered, that all officers fired and hit Eddie Russell.
So in your opinion, do you believe there was any other way that the officer should have responded to this?
No. It's a tragedy, and it's a sad tragedy where we see the cross between mental health and the criminal justice system.
What is the,
Having said that, I can't ignore the law, and I can't ignore what the investigation from a factual basis reveals.
you mentioned about the need for maybe more mental health training for officers, and about the fact that that he did suffer from a mental illness. Could you describe what that meant? Is there any way you could tell us what that was, and would that have played a factor?
Yeah, out of respect in meeting with the family, I promised them that I was not going to disclose the mental health issues at this time. Now, those obviously, those of you are aware that FOIA may be an avenue, but at this time, out of respect for both the deceased Eddie Russell Jr. and his family, I am not disclosing that.
Did the officers know that he had a mental illness?
Yes.
And if they did, what could they have done different? According to you, he's walking with a gun.
That's
according to you, and that's according to what everyone's saying. What could they have done differently?
based on my review and based on the person coming out, advancing in their direction, raising a firearm up to a 45-degree angle, going directly at them, ignoring repeated commands by police to stop, surrender, to drop the gun, and having them in that direction, I find they were justified, and I'm not certain that I have any alternatives that they would have, given the fact that he is advancing with deadly force.
Does our Peoria Police Department have the beanbag weapons?
I know they have non-lethal force, but that question should be directed to the Peoria Police Department.
So it seems like we have the police, the Illinois State Police, investigating the police and taking their account of what happened to draw a conclusion. But there's no other evidence to prove that maybe the Peoria Police Department didn't tell the whole truth, or maybe there were some details left out that would have been critical in the outcome of this investigation. So I'm trying to figure out, as citizens, what are we to do, or how do you handle this situation going forward to where there's no dash cam footage, there's no audio, there's no witnesses?
Yeah, let me respond. First of all, there would be now, because that robot now has a recording capacity. Also, there will be, after the pilot program, we are now going forward with body cameras. To answer the question in terms of the Illinois State Police, the statute that provides for this investigation prescribes the investigation by certified lead homicide investigators and identifies the Illinois State Police.
Mr. Brady, if you're not familiar, though, with standard operating procedures of the Peoria Police Department, how can you be sure, and how can you say with so much confidence that they did everything correctly?
I did not say that the Peoria Police did everything correctly. I'm not here to review what the Peoria police officers, in terms of what they did in terms of conducting this investigation. What I am here to say is that the Illinois State Police conducted the investigation. I reviewed those findings. I applied the appellate court opinions, and I've rendered my opinion.
Thank you.
Other questions?
But the police force knew that he had a mental illness, and they did not call ERS? I want to clarify.
I don't know that they did or didn't call ERS. They were aware.
Before they ever got to the scene, didn't they know that from what I've heard, I might be wrong, that he had prior incident? Did they know when they got in the scene if he had a mental illness or not?
They knew at the scene that he had a mental illness. The officer that was at the bank knew that he had a mental
Was
illness.
ERS called?
I don't know that.
Shouldn't you know that since you're investigating the case?
Well, had they been
Because
called,
maybe if a mediator and they knew he had a mental illness, maybe
Yeah,
that could have been prevented.
at the time, it would not have been appropriate for
And
the,
has the money been recovered?
the money was recovered. It was recovered on Eddie Russell. There was $100 in what's known as bait money, which would be bank money, and that money was recovered. The entire amount was recovered from Eddie Russell's pants pocket. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you.